a few weeks without food, a few days without water, and a few minutes without air. And that is all it'll take to kill this animal. Of course, I'm kidding. A few hours without food will do it. But anyway, there are others who are more, who have greater staying power. Now, the thing is that as we move from the village to the city, we made ourselves even more hostage to this fact, not less so. Our ancestors had control over their food supply, more or less, and they could always go to the nearby water source to draw water. It took them time to do so, but they did. Today, you have to pay for your food. You don't grow it anymore, and very soon you'll have to pay for your water. Now, the thing is that you would say, but yes, but I have other things. I have cars, I have houses, I have shelter. True, but all that has come at a cost, and it has happened because of the use of energy, hydrocarbons to be specific. Your car runs on oil or perhaps gas, as here in Delhi and other places. The cement industry, the steel industry, all of them run on hydrocarbons or coal, mostly coal-based electricity. So the fact of the matter is that it is energy that is behind this outgrowth that you call development, and exhaustible energy sources at the moment, hydrocarbons mostly. So what that has done to you is that it has taken away clean air. So energy has now brought you to a situation where apart from food and water, you don't even have clean air. And the more you pursue this path of development, this path which apparently takes us to greater glory, the more hostage you become to what I call the nexus between energy, food, and water. See, to understand this nexus, think about this. Every time you go to the filling station to fill your car tank, you're basically bumping up the cost of food, the cost of the food that you eat. Because it's like this. Oil and gas markets are linked to each other. Now, naphtha and gas, natural gas, these are the main feedstocks for fertilizers. Fertilizers are what you need to grow your food, because you could reach this level, this humongous 7 billion population, only because of chemical farming, because you have enough food, well, again, more or less for 7 billion people. Now, the thing is, those fertilizers become expensive every time you fill your gas tank. And if fertilizers become expensive, the input for agriculture becomes expensive. And also, as your city grows outward, you're adding more and more food miles. So that way also, you add on to the cost of food because of the fact that you drive a car. So now this chain is getting more and more reinforced with time as more and more people move into what is called the middle class the world over. People, what is the middle class really? I define the middle class as people who have disposable income above and beyond the basic costs to buy stuff. Stuff which is apparently created through value addition, and which, the creation of which pays for all our, existence, the middle class and other existence, etc. But the fact is that if this is the chain between energy and food, there are other links as well. There is a link between food and water, obviously. Your agricultural sector, say in India or in China, draws more than three quarters to almost 90% of your total fresh water. So the food that you have is not just food, it's also water. Now what happens there is, where is all this happening? This is taking place at the site of civilization itself. This is taking place in the basic element of what we call civilization. Catchment areas, river basins, oases. There is no civilization without water. And everything that we do, to a greater or lesser degree, is contingent on the use of water. Your industrial processes are all dependent on water. Your energy processes are all dependent on water. 48% of freshwater withdrawals in the United States are by the energy sector over there, by the power sector to be precise, the electricity sector. So there you can see there's a link between energy, food, and water almost everywhere. There's a link between energy and water in other ways also. In a city, when you talk about a city and you draw water, you either draw water using a tube well or you have piped water supply. That necessarily means energy use, doesn't it? You're not really going to a neighborhood well and drawing water anymore, as you used to in the village. So the thing is, you have ended up completely reinforcing the chain of energy, food, and water as you have moved to what is called industrial urbanization. This urbanization itself has taken place at the very place where you used to farm. And the reason for that is simple, water. Don't you often hear, Myanmar has the green field advantage now? Yes, it very literally has green fields where the water is not toxic and there is a lot of it. So you can move from, cultivating rice to building a Tata Nano factory over there. Now the thing is that, but the moment you do that, you irreversibly change the landscape. You cannot start doing agriculture again at the site of an old factory. But what you can do is you can build a condo over there. You can use it for real estate. I think old-timers would remember, there used to be, even now, in Narayana, in parts of Delhi, you have industrial belts. Very soon, they would give way to, very large real estate complexes. And that is the way this entire industrial urbanization process unfolds. You have the village, somebody builds a plant, surplus labor comes from the village, they settle in and around the plant. The managers also buy land around the plant. But over time, that factory winds up. And even that, in the place of the factory doesn't come another factory, but real estate. So you have a situation where you move in one direction only. And your city grows out like this. And the food miles increase. And the link between energy, food, and water only keeps getting reinforced. Now, the thing is, there is a point where you have a lot of labor coming in from the countryside when your capitalists can, use them at reasonable rates, because food sources are also not that far away, to build stuff, to add value. And that value addition gets reflected in your salaries, which are above and beyond your basic needs. But as time goes by and you start feeling the basic cost of living in a city, the labor class starts demanding higher wages. Higher wages necessarily mean a decline in the rate of return for the capitalists. So what capitalists then do is they look to go to new river basins. Okay, so when America had the Great Depression in the 30s, what they did was they industrialized the entire South. That is when the Tennessee Valley Authority was set up. But now almost, and the thing was, the South was still rural, so it also had labor. Labor is a very important component here. There has to be surplus labor. Then what happened was, and Europe was the first place to industrialize. It was England and then the rest of the European continent. What you see in Europe now is a completely urbanized river basin. All those nice buildings that you see in Europe and the clean streets and all are basically the remnants of an industrial age, which they spirited away. The reason for that was very simple. All your industry and all the stuff you manufacture come at a cost to the environment. Clean air is just right there, So what they did was they introduced all these Clean Air Acts and other environmental legislation, and they moved away all that stuff to China. And before China, it was Taiwan. And, before Taiwan, it was actually Japan to an extent. Japan underwent its own industrial process also. The thing is that you cannot have that value-adding manufacturing sector without costs. And those costs are very high. There are health costs, and there are huge environmental costs. And those will also push up the costs of energy, food, and water. Because now you will have toxic water. You will have to spend money to cure that water. Now, why is this important? Because in the urban setting, you need water and energy and food to live, as before. Energy now more so because you run everything on energy. And the thing is, but you need money to buy it. And if the costs of those things keep rising the way they are, how are you going to buy anything else? And if you can't buy anything else, why would anybody invest in your economy? Capitalists invest where the demand is. Now, what has happened in the West was they started facing this situation after the OPEC crisis of 1973, when costs started rising rapidly. What they did over there was they started sending all their dirty industries to the East, primarily China. And they started using currency arbitrage. They let their currencies appreciate a bit to make it cheaper even after moving all that stuff 10,000 kilometers from China. And the jobs that they created were real estate jobs. All the smokestacks moving away, real estate being built over there, and jobs in selling the stuff that is being brought in from China. And this whole service sector economy was born. But that also had limitations. With the growth of the internet, some capitalists found it better to move the service sector jobs elsewhere also. That created the initial impetus for India's growth. And the other thing that it did was, it created a situation whereby after America and the West reached a demographic plateau, America's still not there, but it will be there, there's no real demand for houses anymore. How many houses is a person going to purchase? And how? So yes, there is speculation, which is why you have bubbles. So what you see in the West is a series of bubbles, essentially a series of bubbles masquerading as development. And now what has happened is because of that, because of the fact, the truth is America or Europe cannot feed themselves anymore because they're completely urbanized and all their labor has come to the urban centers. Their land is polluted, especially the American Midwest, large parts of England. So they want to now hold on to their currency. They want to hold on to currency strength because it makes imports much cheaper for them, while they come out with new ideas about innovation and technology and so on and so forth. In the meantime, China has industrialized like crazy. You can now buy a lot of things with the yuan. You can buy iPads with the yuan, you can buy tractors with the yuan, all of it is made in China. But the fact is that all of those things require energy and hydrocarbons. And all of that is still under the control of the Western military powers, especially the US military. The biggest gainer from Iraq were the two big Chinese companies, Sinopec and CNPC. But they could do so only because the Western bloc allowed them to use all the oil in Iraq and have been allowing them now. Because you see, you talk about innovation, you talk about the IT economy, but your phone over there uses rare earths, which are very difficult to mine. It runs on electricity, which is mostly coal-based. So you have to, at some point, understand that this entire service sector innovation model is dependent on very real resources, especially hydrocarbons. People talk about a new age of 3D printing. 3D printing requires thermoplastic resins and polymer resins, which are all basically petrochemicals, petrochemical sector. And the chief feedstock for petrochemicals is still naphtha and gas, and natural gas. So it's not innovation in a vacuum. It's innovation based on the same old things. The same goes for anything else you do right now. So to avoid the fate of, now what happens is, as your population plateaus, and you have a situation where people no longer demand that much because they're not having children, and also costs have risen, you have a situation where government spending more and more gets directed towards satisfying basic costs without there being any growth in the economy. This leads to greater government indebtedness. And that is what you see across the world in all the Western economies. And you see debates about whether water should be given free or whether electricity should be subsidized or whether healthcare should be provided. 50 million Americans are now on food stamps. So they need imports from Africa, they need imports from India to defray costs, and they need a strong dollar. But the Chinese have ideas of their own. You see, having a reserve currency endows you with the possibility of investing with very little transaction costs. And it gives you control, financial power to invest anywhere in the world, even if they had nothing to do with you before. So this is the point of conflict that we are coming to very soon. My point is, India must understand that it cannot go down the way of China. For India to not go down the way of China and the West before China, India has to do what I call the strategy of technology. In the strategy of technology, our energy should be focused on solving the basic energy, food, water problem. We should focus on agriculture. A new age of agriculture is required. We have to make agriculture cool again. And we cannot have these gigantic urban sprawls where the farm is 100 kilometers away. We have to look at some new model of urbanization. On the energy side of things, we have to move in two directions. We have to look for nuclear for the larger requirements, because our requirements are expanding. And we have to look at renewables for decentralized generation. Like you have solar heaters over here. You know, you've taken something off the grid. You can warm your water yourself. But you can't run big factories on solar or wind. The technology is just not there. So, and main thing that you have to do is you have to change your mindset. We have to look back to Gandhi. When Gandhi talked about the village economy, this is what he meant. He understood what this outgrowth called development would lead to, which is why he talked about simple manufacturing, simple economic stuff like that. Granted, we can't totally go back to that, but we have to keep our focus on costs. The focus of innovation should be on costs. There is no point developing and wearing suits only to crash and burn the next day. The idea is sustainability. Civilizations don't flourish, they survive. And that is what India has to understand. India has to look at Gandhi again. Thank you.